Saturday?
Yeah.
Lucky number 7. There he is.
Yeah. Bella, yeah.
Hi, baby girl.
Woo!
This is nice.
All right.
Oh, here we go.
Right on.
Unholy hell. How crazy is this, right? Yeah, it's super crazy. Never thought I'd be doing this in a million years. But here I am doing it. Couldn't be doing it for two of the best, most awesomest people in the world. And these guys. But yeah, so Charlene, if most of you know, we've been friends since we were just little thrashers back in the day, you know, doing our thing, FMT punks. And you know, then life happened. We went on separate journeys. She went on to make amazing family, kids and all that stuff. I went on to punk rock. And then yeah. And then many years later, Charlene shows up at my building, and I'm like, what are you doing here? She's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, I live here. And she's like, oh, what? I live here too. I'm like, oh, no way. And then, yeah, so we started hanging out again, going to shows. Thick as thieves again after all these years, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of, we're at a show at the Ivy Room, seeing our friends Kicker, and I come out to have a smoke, and this guy's chatting up Charlene. I'm like, oh, who the fuck's this guy? And so I'm like, oh, you know, I'm like, you know, this is my girl, right? I'm like, oh, I take care of her. She gets home alone. She gets home safe. Who the fuck's this guy? And then, so, anyways, yeah, they started going out still and everything, and you know, then we started going to shows together, like the three of us and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, this is all fucking awesome and shit like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And Charlene's like, oh, I don't know about this guy. He's kind of weird, but I kind of like him. I'm like, oh, well, dude, he's fucking hella cool, man. We have hella stories and shit. I'm like, oh, we became bros. And then he's like, oh, I really like her. I'm like, oh, what's her deal, man? I'm like, oh, I don't know. She's kind of fickle and shit like that. But I know she likes you. I'm like, oh, don't give up. Whatever you do, don't give up. Persistence pays, man. And I'll shit you not. If you look up the phrase persistence in the dictionary, there's gonna be a picture of him. He never gave up on her. Never, ever gave up on her. And she's like, you know what? Yeah, he's kind of cool. And I'm like, oh, dude, you know what? At this point in time, at our age and shit like that, you got someone that loves you to death and puts up with your crazy ass shit and seems to like doing it. Well, you need to hold on to that. And she sure as shit did. And persistence paid off. And here they are.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Right? And here we are. So anyways, at this point in time, do you guys got anything to say to each other?
Thank you for coffee every morning. Just being around Mark. I love you so much.
Coffee. That's one of my tricks. Tony's stuff is right on.
It is.
The funny thing that some people don't know is that we met on OkCupid a couple weeks before we ran into each other. And I was all like, hey, she's a punk rocker. She likes my stories and stuff. And she's like, that guy's kind of pretentious. She thinks she probably never would have followed up if we hadn't run into each other at a bar. But because I thought we were going to go out, I wasn't as nervous as I normally would have been. So that all actually worked out in the end.
Oh, so you meant to do that then, huh?
Yeah,
I see how it is.
So anyway, she's standing in front of me at a show. I go outside and I sit down waiting for her to hopefully come outside. So I didn't initially start pursuing her. I was letting her come to me. And she came to me and was all flirty, and Tony had already warned me off, and I was like, okay, good. Tony's like staring at me. And the persistence part, Charlene would ask me, like, why do you love me? Why do you love me? And half of why I loved her, I would know why, and the other half I didn't know. So I feel like that's like a perfect thing for a relationship. It's like half of it I know exactly why I loved her.
And the other half is we're gonna find out.
I had no fucking idea why I was so crazy about her and stuff. And so I think it's a good balance to have.
And now you're the grody.
And now we're the Grodies. And I wanted to shout out a couple
To
other
the
people.
max!
Wait, one last thing. Last thing is that I wasn't necessarily looking for a long-term relationship, but I kind of fall into that thing. Charlene wasn't. So Tony going, oh, fuck you, you know he's your boyfriend, when she would say no, she didn't have a boyfriend. Or Joe who's over there, when she would freak out, like it was getting too close and too much, she would go to Joe and he would calm her down, like, well, why are you upset, and what's, do you like Mark? Yeah. I'm like, okay, so what's the problem? So anyway, I really heartfelt thank you to Joe. So Charlene wasn't looking for a long-term relationship at the point, and Phil, met Phil early. Phil was very helpful too, because again, calling me like, okay, why are you feeling that way? And so Charlene ultimately decided what I knew, is that we wanted to be together. But the third or fourth time we went out, she told me that we were going to have a loving relationship. She just sort of, doesn't mean we were necessarily going to get married. But when she said that, I almost fell for her at that moment. Like the fourth time we went out, she said, we're going to have a loving relationship. And I was like, okay. Great, and I love you very much.
And here you are now. And on that note, what am I supposed to say?
I guess you pronounce us like
You enunciate us.
Epic! I get to do this shit. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Grody to the max! You sure can. Yeah, we want to see that shit.
Light the fireworks.
Well, holy shit, did that really happen?
Hi,
Did
Bella.
we just do that?
Thanks for
Oh, did great.
coming, you guys.
Wait.